Here's your smart fact of the day.
So, do human beings have a hive mind? First of all, what is a hive mind? The term hive mind seems to have originally been coined by science fiction writer James H. Smith in his short story Second Night of Summer. His idea of the hive mind correlates to a colony, the way in which a colony of bees behaves, as if it were directed by one single intelligence. Welcome to Smarter With Sid, and on this episode of Smarter With Sid, what we're going to try and figure out is what a hive mind is. Do we belong in one? Is it working for us, or should we be searching for a new hive mind? Let's go. Now, here's some context to this episode of mine. I was fascinated by episode number 1908 of the Joe Rogan Experience. It featured a lady called Erica Thompson. And Erica Thompson is the owner and founder of something called Texas Bee Works, an organization promoting public awareness and education of the valuable work bees do and beekeepers do. Now, it's a fascinating rabbit hole that you can get into if you're interested in this kind of thing. But the takeaway over here is the way in which Erica was describing to Joe Rogan the kind of mind or the single intelligence that bees seem to have. Now, let's dive deeper into the contextual details so that you'll understand where I'm going with this. Bees apparently, some of you might know this, of course, are divided into drone bees and worker bees and queen bee and the rest of it. And what is the most fascinating thing about the bee hive is that the bee hive actually operates as if it's a single organism. And it is as if all of these other things, the worker bees and the drone bees and the queen bee are part of that single big organism. Now, this is one intelligence. And so that whole beehive works like an intelligent being if you have to look at it from a system or a process perspective. Now, what do I mean by that? It means that the hive kind of knows when the queen has to be replaced, or the hive kind of knows when the hive needs to be moved to a new location, or the hive knows whom to accept as a new bees coming into that colony, or the hive knows. So when I say the hive knows, what do I mean? It means that even though drone bees and worker bees and queen bees have individual operating methods and lives of their own, they seem to be working in tandem with each other to such a concerted effort, to such a degree that it looks as if it is one single organism. And you can see it in various other animals. And the question is, can we also see it in human beings? And is it really useful for us to actually have or belong to hive minds? If we do have hive minds, what are the benefits and disadvantage of the same, and what can we practically take away from a concept like this? So that is the context. Now, before we go into the details of which hive minds do we belong to, let's kind of realize one small thing. Our cells in our body already are operating like a hive mind, especially our neurons in our brain. Our mental processing happens simultaneously, much like the buzzing behavior of bees, right? And all of these neurons are working in unison towards some goal which we have. It looks very chaotic, but the shared goal is the survival, of the human being and the success of the human being, and our neurons, which are our brain cells, are already doing it. The only thing is that we don't observe it like that. We observe ourselves as a bigger person. Now, extrapolate this, into human beings getting together. This is where the problem arises. What is the problem? Can you identify the hive that you belong to? If I ask you this kind of question, the answer that you will immediately give me is, no, I don't. I have this sense of individuality. I don't want to be known as belonging to this group or that group or whatever. Some of you might say that. Some of you might be proud to say that, I belong to this political party, or I belong to this Rotary Club, or I belong to this organization, or I belong to this country, or, this culture. So we have a situation wherein we are not as rigid as bees. We are a little different from bees. Bees, I jokingly tell my classes, bees are like the perfect socialist or communist. Now, I don't mean this as a political statement, but They seem to know what their roles are. There seems to be perfect contentment for bees to have those roles and play them out throughout their lives. But human beings have aspiration. Human beings have the need to be standing out. And so therefore, there are always hierarchies. Now, those hierarchies can be toxic. Those hierarchies can be welcoming. But whatever we say, we always belong to some sort of structure, whether it is a family structure, whether it is a organization, whether it is, your school or college or whatever it may be. We're always belonging to some structure. Now, those necessarily need not work as hive minds the way in which bees' hives work, because the hierarchy determines the power equation over here, and the power equation determines how stifled you feel or how liberated you feel based upon the kind of hive that you belong to. So there might be some organizations where everybody feels heard. There's some organizations where everybody, is very scared, and so on and so forth. That just as an example of what a hive's mentality can impact an individual's one. So here's the question for you. Do you like the hive that you're in? That's the first question. Secondly, especially if you're an entrepreneur or if you're an influencer or if you're somebody who's working outside of normal hives, like if you don't belong to an organization, if you don't belong to, a university, then do we still belong to hives or are we outsiders? I don't think that we are outsiders because we are social animals, right? I mean, humankind, we are social animals. So essentially, we will need to be part of something or the other, but we still don't know how to define it. Like, for example, when we join a social club, like a Rotary club, or if we, let's say, are an influencer and we collab with different influencers towards a project, or we, go in and do something fun together, or if we're belonging as a community, for a specific cause like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, what are we but belonging constituents to a hive? Now, it becomes extremely important for us to ask this question, especially at the beginning of the year. What hives do I belong to? What communities do I belong to? What networks do I belong to? Are these nurturing for me? Sometimes we may not necessarily be happy with the work hive that we are in, but then maybe it is time to reconsider. Maybe if it's a recessionary time, you can't reconsider, at least figure out hives that can nurture you. Maybe like your family, then spend more time in that hive. Maybe the hive is about like-minded people. Maybe it's about people who have complementary skills. There are so many different kinds of communities that you can belong to. You can feel fulfilled and also more productive and smarter just by belonging to a smarter hive. And I think that's where this whole concept of mastermind comes in, isn't it? Mastermind is a collection of people wherein the realization is that the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. So when you belong to a set of people who are all interested in the idea of growth and the idea of freedom and the idea of flexibility or whatever that value system may be, which is nurturing and yet liberating, then perhaps you've got the right hive mind. Who knows? But you might want to be part of a rigid or more rigid structure, and you will find your own right hive mind. So I thought that this might be a pretty useful sort of episode, especially in conjunction with the earlier one, wherein you're resetting yourself as an individual, right? We spoke about how to have a reset hour. In this one, my suggestion to you is identifying the hives that you would want to belong to in this new year, and perhaps spending more time in those hives so that by the end of the year, you come out the better for it. I hope you like this episode of Smarter With Sid. Many more to come from where this came from. I'm always exploring ways and means in which we can become better. And one of the ways in which we can become better is by collecting together with the right kind of people and therefore the right kind of hive. If you like this podcast, subscribe to it, like it, helps me a lot. And also, I'm the traveling professor, so you can always connect or follow me on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And if you like podcasts like these, just go for whatever stuff IBM's got going for you. On that happy note then, on that happy note.